And welcome back, peeps, to the wonderful episode of the World of Ted, where we explore how single Latter-day Saints can learn, live, and love truly enjoyable dating. Today, we're going to go back and visit Michelle the Great. I haven't really read through this blog post that she had way back when, but I just saw the title and I just said, yeah, we'll put this in the queue. And looking at what to talk about for this episode, I thought, you know what, let's just pull this up. Let's dive into this. And like I said, I haven't read it, so I don't know where we're going to end up. But given our previous video that we made about Michelle the Great, my expectations aren't too high. Let's put it that way. So let me call this up here, and we'll get going with Michelle the Great, otherwise known as Old Maid Mormon. And let's see. So post from August 29, 2014. So it's been a while. The social stigma of being single. And I mean, there has been a social stigma because traditionally the culture has been, the culture has been centered around being married with kids. And so by definition, if you're not married with kids, you don't fit in. Well, if you're single, by definition, you're not married. You might have the kids if you're a single parent, maybe not, but you definitely don't have the marriage part. So by definition, if you're single, you don't belong, you don't fit in. And that's been the traditional call. Now things have been changing, right? So since 2014, when this was written, things have been in motion and changing. But let's take her perspective from 2014. I'm excited to share this, and I'm not sure what that is. It says, the Institute for Clinical Social Work, the experience of never married women in their 30s who desire marriage and children. A dissertation. Oh, a dissertation? From what school? For what degree? Oh, well, it's obviously a PhD, but what's the field? Chicago, Illinois. Institute for Clinical Social Work in Chicago. Okay. Oh, here it is. The experience of never married women in the 30s who desire marriage and children. Long name, amazing results. I stumbled upon this 279-page dissertation PhD file. 3 nights and 14 pages of close reading notes later, I'm ready to report because I found this study understandably fascinating. 25 women, all never married, between the ages of 29 and 39, educated and financially independent, were interviewed for this study. Now, here's the deal. Already right off the bat, I can tell you a few things. Between the ages of 29 and 39, so they're really close to hitting this thing called the wall. The wall is that place where, once you hit the wall, it's like, the natural man has no desire to be with you. And you start freaking out because you're like, I don't know if this thing's going to happen to me because I got this biological clock. It's not even just ticking and it's almost run out of time. And I don't know, maybe out of time already. I don't know. And you're just freaking out over the whole thing, which of course is understandable. But if you're educated, okay, and you're financially independent, well, women, the natural woman wants to marry up. Is never going to consider marrying down. Always wants to marry up. So already right off the bat, if you're educated, you're going to want someone who's even more educated than you are. And if you're financially independent, you're going to want someone who's even more financially independent than you are. A rough figure that's been batted around is 150%. So, if you're looking for someone who is, if you say financial independence, let's say you're making $50K. Not every place is going to, you're going to be financially dependent on $50K, but, there are a lot of places where, you could be living a really good life with $50,000 a year. As a single person, mind you. And so, yeah, if you're a woman making $50K a year, you're probably going to be looking for a man who makes at least $75K. Because again, you want 150%. Because someone who makes 51K makes more than you make if you're making 50K. But that man is not even going to be on your radar, right? If you're looking through the eyes of the natural woman, because the natural woman is going to want someone who makes at least 50% more than she makes, so she can have that sense of dependency upon him. That's just what the natural woman hardwiring is. And so, this gets really, and the more the woman makes, the higher that threshold gets. So let's say the woman makes twice as much. Let's say the woman pulls in 100 G's a year. Well, that means she's looking for a man who makes 150K a year. And guy could be busting his butt, with some sort of trade business, making 120K a year. But even though that's more than she makes, that man's not going to be on her radar because he doesn't make enough money. That's the mindset of the natural woman. So already right here, I can tell you, there may be some reasons why a lot of these women are just not married. Since I can hear the groans of those who don't share my enthusiasm for reading 200-plus page online dissertations for fun, well, if it's in a subject that you're interested in, then yeah, I think that's great. Here's my breakdown of the published results summarized for your benefit. You're welcome. But I hope I'm not the only one who wants to know. Why hasn't a similar study been done in Utah? Oh, gosh. This right here is like one of the big reasons why I never want to live in Utah, ever. Because I've noticed that, there's this culture in Utah, it's different from most other places where the church is. And there's this propensity, in addition to that, there's this propensity for people that live in Utah to think that their world is the world. And I got news for you. The world is a much, much bigger place than Utah. Thank goodness. So yeah, I'm sorry. I want to broaden my horizons and my vision and my thinking. And I don't feel like, if I lived in Utah, I feel like everything would just become more narrow and confined. And yeah, but we certainly have a bigger pool of candidates in Illinois, not exactly the virgin capital of the world. Well, yeah, but it's not like Utah is either, from what I understand. First off, the word old maid, according to the Oxford English Dictionary, has been successfully degrading single women since 1783. 'Tis a cursed thing to be an old maid, while other derogatory cousins such as spinster, unmarried, single, all carry with them the weight of general unpleasantness. Well, that's because, these sorts of connections and connotations are being created within the context of everyone understanding that, you want society to perpetuate. And in the day when, reproducing the species outside of marriage was considered, unacceptable, even though it happened all the time, but it was really frowned upon and looked down upon. And so that's where all of this is going to come from. But okay, I digress. Single women are ignored, marginalized, viewed as victims of outrageous stereotypes, slapped with psychological reasons to excuse our imbalance. We are all irresponsible, damaged, lonely, depressed, incomplete, immature, unfit, too obsessed with love and romance, too picky, yet stuck like dead fish in a dried-up dating pool due to a demographic imbalance that only gets worse the older we get. It's a hopeless situation. Oh, gosh. Stupid thing about the demographics again. Honey, I got news for you, okay? The demographics are not working against you. Okay, get out of this whole numbers thing where you think it was just because, see, again, their world is the world. They're looking at just what's immediately around them, which isn't actually like unique to Utah. It's actually like a part of being human, But you got to get out of this mindset of quit looking at like the world immediately around you and thinking that that's all that there is. Again, the world is a much bigger place. And I think that if you expand your horizons and look out more, that everything actually averages out. There are plenty of single men out there, honey. They just don't live in your neighborhood. Thanks to socialization, the expectation that us girls are brought up on, starting at a very young age, that we will eventually achieve the ideological norm of getting married and having children, becomes a social stigma once you reach a certain age and realize it hasn't happened yet. Well, that's not just a thing for women, honey. Okay, us men experience it too. So that's all I'm going to say with that. Men, interesting enough, do not experience a stigma. What did I just get done saying? We do experience a stigma. Don't even give me that. I you know what? I could start in on telling you experience after experience after experience after experience where I, as an unmarried, single Latter-day Saint man, have felt stigmatized in my culture. Don't even get me started down that rabbit hole. This video will never end if we get going with that. The single woman's experience has been divided into stages, all of which I found eerily familiar. Stage 1, the time warp. The realization or wake-up call that certain life events have not yet come to pass, which leads to overconsuming feelings of bewilderment and panic. Yeah, that's what we in the manosphere call the wall. Stage 2, how do I meet thee? In our desperation, we jump on the gerbil dating wheel, going out with anyone remotely available, signing up for online dating sites, which aren't mentioned at all because the year was 1999 when this was published. Perhaps even cohabitating, just so we won't have to be alone. Oh, that's a bad thing. As our mothers, with their wagging fingers, warned us was a fate worse than death, before wrapping their legs around their worthy priesthood-holding if Mormon hubbies, crying, "Hallelujah, thank God, I already have a man." The pressure for single women not to be alone is great indeed. Well, there's a lot of pressure for single men not to be alone either. Granted, it's not the same because you've got this biological clock running inside of you. But we have a biological clock too. It's just we got a whole lot more time in our clock than you got in yours. Stage 3, the sinkhole. This is where I keep getting stuck. No man materializes for us, and we spend too many Friday nights alone with our old pal Ben and Jerry's, drowning ourselves in self-pity. Well, that's probably a bigger reason why you're single than the demographics. Despair becomes overwhelming, and we fall into a downward spiral of depression and lethargy. Because again, where's your focus? Your focus determines your reality. So where's your focus here? Your focus is on what you don't have and can't do. And when your focus is on that, of course, you're going to have a negative reality. So, because you're focused on the negative, you got to flip that around. Focus on the positive. Focus on what you do have. Focus on what you can do. And start making the changes in you that you need to make so that you can become acceptable enough to get the agreements you need to progress through each stage of the dating journey. You got to go back to fundamentals. You're ignoring the fundamentals. And when you ignore the fundamentals, this is what happens. Downward spiral of depression and lethargy. Life has no meaning, purpose, or direction for single sisters in the Mormon faith. That is patently false. You have to get your direction. God gave you talents and gifts. Don't set that, because this whole idea of just, I'm righteous, so I just have to sit here and wait for the Lord's timing to be right. And when it's right, He'll bless me with this wonderful person, and we'll go happily ever after, like the end of a Jane Austen novel. I'm sorry, honey, life don't work that way. You need to come up with you need to discover what your own purpose is. God gave you talents. So use those talents as the base for figuring out what your personal ministry is and get your duff off the couch. Put down the Ben and Jerry's. Get your duff off the couch. Turn off the Pride and Prejudice DVD, the streaming, the whatever it is. Turn that off and get out there in the real world and start making a difference in people. Start making a contribution that makes the world a better place. Start sharing the goodness that you have with others and help them along their path. Start holding up the light that you have. Stop the pity party. Because there's nothing to pity with. The only thing to pity with that is you. For not picking yourself up and actually taking the restored gospel of Jesus Christ deep into your heart. Because when you do that, you realize that you have worth. And that you can share that worth with others. The gospel is about making contributions in other people's lives, about service. So devote yourself there. Get out of this idea that there's no direction. There is direction for you. And it is in our faith. Because our faith says what? You need to get revelation for your own life. What more is there to say? A wholesome, virtuous homebody does not a heavenly Father bless. Yes, exactly. Pass the short, fast, juicy worms, please. Yeah. I don't know what that last sentence is about, but come on, people. Again, put down the Ben and Jerry's, turn off the Jane Austen movie, and get out there in the real world and start actually doing stuff. Stage 4, the sine wave experience. Anticipation is keeping me waiting. No, you're keeping yourself waiting. Sooner or later, we do bounce back, climb out of the sinkhole, find activities and goals to renew our focus on. This is where the study starts to deviate from single women to all women in general. This is why men are from Mars. They just don't get how women can be consistently up and down. Well, that's because going up and down is following an emotional roller coaster ride. I mean, you're hardwired to think in terms of emotion. Whereas men are hardwired to think in terms of intellect, logical reasoning based on intellect. That's the currency that men trade in. But women don't trade in that currency. Women trade in a currency of emotion. So they are logical, but their logic is based in emotion. And of course, emotions come and go. So one moment you're up, the next you're down. And it's just, back and forth. So of course we don't get it because we're not like that. We're not wired that way. Yes, what I just got to say, it's a roller coaster of emotions. These mood swings are amplified for single women, especially during, because you got the hormones flaring. Okay, got it. We fluctuate between giddy joy at all the possibilities life has in store for us and despair will never be realized. Our biological clock keeps ticking on. Stage 5, free to be me or doing my strong woman number. All Gen Xers will remember this. I'm not sure what that is, but Michelle the Great, I'm not really inclined to click on the link. Free to Be You and Me was an audio record and reel-to-reel film series that was a staple in my first grade class at Rose Avenue Elementary in Modesto, California, which my brain had completely blocked out until YouTube came along. Basically, the idea of this stage is that single women can embrace that feminism ideal of self-actualization, become their best self, as Oprah would say, in all areas where men are lacking, such as their professional and family connections, taking up new hobbies and interests, forming strong networks of support through friends, church acquaintances, finding God, and even therapy, whatever it takes to cope. Always emerging victorious and stronger, composing our own version of Let It Go and singing to the world. Well, this might sound like the whole idea of a personal ministry that I was getting at just a moment ago. But in reality, what we're looking at here is different than what is the feminist ideal that's being described here. Because the feminist ideal says a woman doesn't need a man, which is really antithetical to what we know to be true in the restored gospel of Jesus Christ. So, when you engage a personal ministry, you give your all to that service, and it's not a compensation. It's not a coping mechanism, right? It doesn't, if you think that's what it is, then you don't understand what it is. Okay. It's about devoting yourself to something, and it's not a coping mechanism because it's not like when you find somebody, you stop, getting off that train. You don't jump off that train because ideally what you want is someone who compliments you, someone who you will help you continue on with that journey of contribution and service and giving what you uniquely have to give to the world. So it's not a coping mechanism. If it were a coping mechanism, once you get married, then that would stop. And maybe for some people, they treat it as a coping mechanism. And if that works for you, hey, great. But I'm here to tell you, you're missing a whole lot of joy that you could be getting all along the way. by actually investing all of yourself into it and going full bore with it. And honestly speaking, it's like you give yourself full bore to it, you're more likely to find someone who will compliment you, who you will be ecstatically happy with. You're more likely to find that person when you're fully engaged in that personal ministry. So, that's all I have to say about that. There's a distinct correlation for singles versus marriage between work and life satisfaction. A brick wall I'm forever banging my head against as someone who just can't achieve success on the socioeconomic ladder. 2 bachelor's degrees, certifications, yet stuck in the food service industry. I'm living the American dream. So why do I feel so depressed? Well, stuck in the food service industry? Honey, it's like you don't seem to understand the way the economic marketplace works, right? It's like people will pay you what they think you are worth. So if you want to be paid more, you need to be worth more. And it's not a matter of 2 bachelor's degrees and certifications. Because at the end of the day, someone who's going to hire you ultimately hires you because you can solve a problem that they have. So if you're not solving the problem that they have, you can't offer a solution. It doesn't matter what degrees or certifications you have. At the end of the day, all that really matters is, can you solve the problem that I have? That's why you find employment. Employer has a problem, trying to find a solution. That's really all it is. And so if you focus yourself on becoming more valuable and solving the types of problems that can bring in more income, then you make more money. You bring more money in. It's really no more complicated than that. Singles struggle with the desire for intimacy, yet desire for isolation and independence. Well, I don't think that's something that's unique to singles. I think that's just part of being human. I'm sure there's a lot of married people who have the same sort of struggles as well. So I don't really think that's unique to being single. I just think that's part of being human. The study never reveals if any of the 25 women were still virgins, but many of them admitted to seeking therapy out of regret for their past sexual relations with men who never valued them and finding the closure they needed to move past the pain and renew hope that the next relationship that came along might lead to marriage. That's where the study clashed for me. The phrase, having it all, kept popping up. Well, if you're basing that feminist theology, then yeah, that is the feminist theology. The feminist message is you can have it all, ladies. You don't need a man. You can focus now on your career while you're young and get all of this material success. And then if you want a family later, then you can add it in. You can have it all. That's why the phrase having it all probably keeps popping up, because they're dealing with women who buy into this feminist business. And I thought that was interesting, considering the debate is still raging today. Over and over, the study insists on proving that single, independent, feminist-minded women can still find happiness and fulfillment without a husband, home, and children of their own to focus on. I was never one of those women who feared I'd lose my identity if I got too close to a man who desired marriage. Do such men even exist? I was never one of those women content to party my life away, sleeping around and whoring it up until the wake-up call stage kicked in, as the economics of YouTube video shows the forlorn woman slumped outside the wedding chapel, ready to settle down, but unable to find compatibility, as all the marriage-minded men are already taken or not ready to commit yet. Yeah, that's... Again, you broaden your horizons. That's all I was going to say about that one. Just broaden your horizons. I guess for those of us wise enough to hold out and wait for Mr. Right, gosh, here it is with the one and only thing again. We just have to keep hoping there's still 1 or 2 emotionally available men out there looking and preparing themselves to be worthy of us, as much as we have been working on self-improvement to be ready for them. Yeah, you just have to look outside your neighborhood. Are you volatile, dangerous, out of control, or do you have a healthy self-image? Finding fulfillment in counting your blessings, being the best aunt in Zion, visiting teacher, Temple worker, if you still have a current recommend in the faith, an all-around do-gooder is admirable, but somehow I don't find it very fulfilling anymore, and such activities sure as heck don't pay the bills or have ever opened any doors to a satisfying career. Again, you're not focused on your unique personal ministry. It's not about just going through the checklist and skimming the surface. It's not just about being active. It's not just about being righteous. It's not just about doing the things that will get you accepted within, active Latter-day Saints society. It's about devoting your all to your unique personal contribution to the world, where you're giving goodness and holding up light and just doing what you can do to give back to the world, using the talents and gifts that God has given you to help other people along their path. You're not talking about that. You're talking about just the checklist items of the Sunday school answers. That's what you're talking about here. And that's not going to cut it, because that doesn't go deep enough. It certainly never led me to any long-term relationships. Of course not, because if all you're doing is just checking off the list of Sunday school answers, that's not very enticing to a guy. You need to have a life that's worth sharing. And simply checking off those checklist items on the Sunday school answers doesn't make for a very interesting life, because guess what? We're doing that too. We know how interesting that really is. And we're not interested in having more of that. I found it interesting that many of the women in the study also reported unresolved family issues, traumatic childhoods with abuse, divorce, and absent parents who failed to be there for them, while those who had a strong network of supporting and encouraging family members and friends were better off. Well, duh, that just makes sense. All I can do is revert back to my meager blessings. 2 nephews. Meager? You call these blessings meager? 2 nephews? A little sister who doesn't mind me tagging along, observing her experiencing all those life events I seem destined never to have in this life. A younger brother with whom I can easily spend an hour on the phone talking to about everything under the sun, and a good platonic guy friend at my work who can always make me laugh, as well as a handful of single girlfriends with whom I can find support and encouragement. Sounds like you got a lot of blessings. That I wouldn't describe that as meager. This is part of your problem. Your thinking, your mindset, the way you're looking at things. Again, you're focused on what you don't have. And that's what's leading you to call these blessings meager. Focus on what you do have. Realize the blessings and the greatness of the blessings that you do have. And let the gratitude from those blessings swell within you. And you'll open yourself up to receive more blessings. But what blessings are going to come your way when you actually downplay the blessings you already have by calling them meager? Yeah, this is again, I hope you peeps are seeing. This is why this woman is so single. It's all up here with the way she's thinking about things. It was nice to read this very, very long dissertation and find validation of my own experience as a never married woman in my 30s who desires marriage and children, but can't seem to find it. Nice to know I'm not the only one who feels this way. I'm sure, great, but what? Okay, now what? Okay, so you had some validation. Great, now what? I mean, how are you going to make your life different? How are you going to make your life? How are you going to, what contribution are you going to make because of this now? I don't know. It's all over. But there's one comment. Jamie Lynn said, I just stumbled upon your blog and read the whole dissertation. Fascinating. Thanks for posting. This definitely hit home for me as well. As an unmarried practicing Mormon, when my 29th birthday loomed over me, I was filled with such despair, mixed with anger. My entire sense of self, admittedly not very strong, was shaken to the core. I felt nothing but regret, anger, and devastation. Like the women in the sinkhole group, I told no one these feelings. Instead, I tried to bury them. They were eating at me daily. This led to a vicious cycle of anxiety, depression, exacerbated by social isolation. Not healthy. Yeah, you think? See, again, the problem here is you keep focusing on what you don't have. So I went to therapy. Great. Here we go. Half the time I find singles in this situation that go to therapy just end up worse. Seriously. See what happens. For me, it was a game changer. Okay, that's great. Like a lot of the women in the study, I realized I had to quit placing my sense of self-worth on my marital status. Yeah, exactly. I also had to overcome feelings of inadequacy, undesirability, and unworthiness that I perceived to be causing my perpetually single status. During therapy, I discovered a newfound sense of self that led to me evaluating my needs and priorities as well as my authentic values and beliefs. Frankly, it has been difficult work, but so worth it. Now at 32, I'm much closer to identifying with the Free to Be Me group. I'm still working toward it, but I'm so much closer than I ever thought possible. Honestly, I left the church at 31 to save my own sanity. Oh, such the wrong move. I'm so sorry to hear that. I really am. I'm so sorry to hear that you left the safety of the church. I mean, I understand there are a lot of singles who travel this path because they don't step outside of themselves and get a hold of the cultural forces that are at work and get a hold of their own thinking. But, so I understand what's going on, but still, it saddens me greatly that you left the spiritual safety of the church. Please know I respect everyone's journey. Certainly, I feel this is something all Mormon single women need to do. There were myriad of factors led to my decision, but I can't pretend that removing myself from a culture that glorifies marriage and motherhood didn't help. It did. It also restored my hope and belief that I will meet a great guy, as there are plenty of single non-Mormons in their 30s, probably more than when this study was done in 1999. Yeah, but I don't know that many of them are going to want you at 32, honey. Especially, see, when you leave that realm of where it's possible to find a man who sees with the eyes of the covenant man as opposed to the natural man, now you're outside the faith. Now all you see are men who are ruled by the natural man. They don't have that covenant mindset. They're all ruled by the natural man. So at 32, you don't have much youth left. So, youth is one of the things that the natural man highly values. So I wish you luck with that, honey. I really do. In short, I was dreading my 30s single woman, but have been shocked and thrilled to discover I love it. Please forgive the overly long comment. Also, I don't mean to offend or act as a poster child for therapy or leaving the church. I'm still friends with all my single LDS friends. I very much admire and respect their decision to stay, despite enormous challenges. I recognize my experience is just my experience, and each woman needs to forge her own path. I agree, each woman needs to forge her own path, but that path needs to be staying on the covenant path, the path of spiritual safety in the church. That is the only place where you can have spiritual safety. And if you leave that, then you're just exposing yourself to a lot of spiritual danger. That's just the bottom line of that. Just why it saddens me that you left. Thanks for sharing your thoughts on being single in this blog. As a socio-cultural issue that needs to be openly discussed and validated. I do agree that this is an issue that needs to be validated. That's something I've been saying for a long time on Join the Journey Radio, in the blog, on the radio show, I've been mentioning that. So yeah, that's what that is. But that's all we have here, peeps. So we reached the end. What can I say? It's Michelle the Great. So yeah, I guess, what more can I say with this? Broaden your horizons, change the way you think up here. Really, half the problems that we have are up here in our heads. And if we just get our thinking straight, half our problems will just go away. Boom, just like that. Seriously. And I can say that confidently because that's what I've experienced in my life. Get this straight up here, half the problems go away. The other half, you can tackle them a lot easier when you've got this up here. You got that organized right. So that's what we talk about here on this program. So, unfortunately, it's all the time we have for this episode of The World of Ted. So be sure to come back next time for another exciting episode in which we explore how single Latter-day Saints can learn, live, and love truly enjoyable dating. See you next time.